Kortnee Strickland, and this is Rasberry, and today we're going to be discussing Somalia. Somalia is in Eastern Africa. It is west of Ethiopia. The Gulf of Aden is north of it, and the Indian Ocean is on its east. It is a desert climate, but it does have some monsoon seasons with irregular rainfall in between. The major cities, you can see them on the map there, and then the population is 13 million, and the population is pretty even for females and males. The economic status in Somalia is that they have had 30 years of war, that being external and internal civil wars. The country and the people are deep in debt because of these wars, and there's a low supply of food and water. The government is in shambles. There's a lot of social and gender inequality, and there's a lot of environmental degradation. Some positives that Somalia does have is that it is beginning to urbanize. Their fertility rates are rising to match that mortality rate that it has, and then it's starting to increase its use of technology.
Jumping into language and religion. So there are two official languages, which is going to be Arabic and Somali. And then there's two minor languages, English and Italian, which when we get into the history later, that'll make a lot more sense. Religious-wise, there's 99.9% of the population is a devoted Muslim, and if you do more extensive research, there's different branches to that, and then there's 0.1% is an ethnic religionist. And diving into the culture, so traditions are focused around poetry, folk dancing, plays, and singing, and they have a lot of values, and they hold those values true to home. So one thing they really believe in is showing greater respect to elders. They believe that because elders have lived longer, they're more wise, so they demand a more amount of respect. And they're also very open to discussing their family lineage. So whether you're friends, your neighbors, or they're new to America per se, they want you to ask about their family lineage. They're very open about, their ancestors and their family tree, unlike we're here in America where we like to keep that more on the quiet side. They're very friendly natured, so if you're, sad or upset or going through a rough time, they really want to help you out, and they always want to open your home to you, but in an unfortunate way that makes them easy to manipulate. And they perform their singing and other performances at family, religious, and state ceremonies in official dress. So if we go back to some of those traditions, they'll sing and do the folk dancing and plays and poetry at these official ceremonies, which unfortunately with more modern times is only performed in more rural communities, but it's still an important part of what Somalia is today. Holidays, July 1st, 1960 was the foundation of the Somali Republic. So every year that's celebrated on July 1st, but it is celebrated on June 26th in Somaliland, which is just kind of like a part of Somalia, like Kortnee was talking about earlier. Getting into the politics and economics, so they have a federal parliamentary republic, but it's in weak political stability. To prove it, below we have some statistics. So with unemployment and poverty rates, the unemployment rate is 19.03%, which is almost a fifth of the 3.339 million working people, which when you do the math it's over 635,000 people. Specifically, the youth unemployment rate is 34.3%, 32.4% being male, and 37.4% being female, and over half of the population, about 54.4%, is below the poverty line. Continue into that, there's been a lot of impactful conflicts that have formed Somalia into what we see today. So it first became a republic in 1960. So prior to 1960, like we see in history with a lot of the rest of the continent of Africa, there's a lot of European groups that come in and they settle different settlements and colonies. So in 1960, British Somaliland got their independence and they joined the Italian Somaliland and formed Somalia that we see today. 9 years later, in 1969, General Mohammed came to power and he led a social dictatorship until 1991 when it collapsed. And this is when a war broke out, and then that war stopped, but in 2007 a war against al-Shabaab's broken out, and it is still going to today.
In Somalia, only 40% of children are enrolled in school. Their literacy rate is 41.1%, which is a little bit higher than that enrollment rate, but you can see the social economic status, whereas girls and pastors' children are less likely to be educated in these classrooms. The classrooms are overcrowded, they have water and sanitation issues, and the trained teachers and school books needed for these classrooms are hard to come by. People leave Somalia for a bunch of different reasons, like environmental concerns about the water and food scarcity, overgrazing, and then just the land degradation that is happening because of the war. And then there's a lot of political instability due to all of the war that has been going on. And then people are pulled to go to the United States because the United States does offer clean water, public education to everyone, and a higher sense of safety.
So with the immigrant experience, like Kortnee's spoken a lot about, some daily challenges of why they continue to move and have moved to America before is because they are living in an active war zone. There is low unemployment or low income if they have a job or any sense of income, and there's a scarcity of those necessary resources. And they do make some contributions to the U.S. when they move here. Some are involved in legislative in the federal, so we see some involved in our Congress, and there's others involved on more state and local levels, such as school boards and town councils. So they're involved in their communities and making their communities a better place because they've seen that before and they want to improve the places around them. They also work day-to-day jobs and are contributing to tax collections, and there are some advocate occupations. The source below is of a woman who her father was an ambassador for Somalia, and she grew up seeing just all the negativity and destruction, and she now lives in Lansing, Michigan, and she has a foundation that supports diversity and refugees and just promoting knowledge and understanding. And Texas has a couple different organizations that can offer help to refugees. The first one listed is the Somali Bantu community of Greater Houston, which if you look at that first picture above, that's what it's referencing to. They offer a lot of sources for education, for K through 12, for night classes, for how to get citizenship, how to get jobs, how to get housing. So they're really big on both the education and the safe haven, but also getting people founded in America as citizens and having that true sense of welcome to America. And the second one listed is the Somali community in Amarillo. They have a lot of the same options and they really help, which is going to be that second picture there, and they help with education and getting settled and finding housing and a lot of the similar things just on the other side of Texas.
Educators, we need to understand that these students and families are coming from an active war zone. They are going to have little or nothing at all. We need to help these families with resources because the more educated and balanced the family life is, the better the student is to thrive and learn because their safety requirement is being met. And Anna talked about some of these resources in Texas, like the social services in Amarillo or the Somalia Bantu community of Greater Houston. And as teachers, we also need to be growing in how we teach immigrant students, like the Migrant Education Region 1 Education Service Center is one way that we can learn more how to teach these students, or the Texas Student Refugee Framework that is specifically for Texas teachers.
So instead of just going past the reference slide, I want to talk about it for a moment. So listed below are all the sources that we used and cited in our presentation, whether it was the link itself or information that was quoted. So if you want to learn more or dive deeper into any of the information that was shared today, here are the sources below, and just any way to help you learn more about Somali students.